Imagine a day where children are guided and nurtured in a way that honors their unique humanness. A day where, instead of being expected to change in order to fit in, children can be met right where they're at. Welcome to Where They're Planted, a podcast for parents and care providers of unique children. Caring for a child with a developmental, emotional, or behavior challenge, a neurodiverse brain, or difficult early life experiences can be confusing and exhausting. On this podcast, we'll help your child flourish and strengthen their roots by helping you not only understand them, but also gain the skills to help them bloom where they're planted. We'll use brain science, nervous system tools, collaborative strategy sessions, and a deep understanding of the developmental process to create a fertile environment around your child in order to nurture their growth. I am your host, Jen Bluske, an occupational therapist with over 25 years of experience and a parent coach. My most closely held title, however, is that of a single mom of 2 thriving adopted kids, so I have walked this walk. I am truly excited to share, teach, and dive into these important topics on each episode. Welcome back. In the upcoming episodes, I'm going to start answering questions from you, the parent, in order to help develop some strategies and skills that are relevant to you. Today, I want to start a conversation about one of these most common questions I get from parents. And that question is, what do I do to stop my child's wild emotional swings or meltdowns? I feel like I'm constantly walking on eggshells. If you have ever been here as a parent of a 2-year-old or a 5-year-old, 10-year-old, or maybe a 15-year-old, you know that this type of emotionality can feel overwhelming to us as parents, impact every part of our day, and bring up many of our own strong emotions and memories about what it means to deeply feel a feeling. I want to give an example that I heard just this week from a parent of a 10-year-old boy. Every morning before school, this boy, who let's call Joe, is a super big challenge to wake up. His mom needs to wake him up several times, remind him about what's coming next, and often has to sit with him until he finally gets up. Over the morning, his mom becomes more and more frustrated, rightfully so, because this repeats each and every morning. She feels like she has to walk on eggshells in order to get him through the morning. Usually, at some point, Joe will become upset because his favorite t-shirt isn't clean, or because his sister looked at him the wrong way, or one of many other things. He might yell. He might say he hates his life. He often tells his mom that she never helps him and that she is mean. Emotions during this time are usually running high. Joe yelling, refusing, and sometimes physically acting out. Mom sometimes yelling, begging, crying in order to get her child out the door and through the frustration of just trying to get him to school. Each person in this scenario is falling into an emotional response, but neither is able to truly see the emotion or have understanding of the underlying need that is being expressed by that emotion. By the time the routine is over and Joe gets into the car, things have usually cooled down and he's back to his calm self, anxiously requesting his electronics for the car ride to school. At this point, mom is frazzled and feels like she just ran an emotional roller coaster. When we are in the thick of it as parents, watching our children ride this emotional roller coaster, often our first response is to stop the emotion, especially those negative ones, such as anger, sadness, distress. We want to correct the negative emotion, have the child say it kindly, help them learn to be grateful, or maybe even soothe our own difficult emotional state. So in this episode, I want to start a conversation about the why of emotions, to maybe help us as a parents or caregivers think about them in just a little bit of a broader way, have a deeper understanding for our children's emotional lives and our own. I want to think through some initial ways we can start showing up for our children while they are on this roller coaster of emotion, by ending with a few concrete strategies that you can give a try, hopefully today. In childhood and throughout life, our emotions raise up for the purpose to inform us that we have a need or something that needs to be dealt with. I want to highlight that for a moment. When we're thinking about our emotions in our kids and in ourselves, emotions aren't inherently bad or good. Our emotions are simply body sensations that come up through our consciousness to tell us of a pending need or to inform us that a core need is being met. Sounds simple, right? Emotions are meant to be felt and the need addressed. In evolutionary terms, they're all important and valid. When children are very young, infants, everything is experienced through those body sensations because the thinking part of our brain, the frontal cortex, isn't turned on yet. So let's think about our toddlers for a moment who lay on the floor and kick and scream as they experience the anger of being told no to ice cream. That's an example of experiencing a body sensation of anger. As adults, have you ever found yourself with clenched fists at the steering wheel when somebody cuts you off on the road? This is also a body sensation of anger, albeit a more adult version. Now, if you're here with me today, it's likely that your experience of parenting is that your child is in the near constant state of deeply experiencing their emotions without recourse, boundaries, or an end in sight. That even the slightest bit of distress makes them fall over the cliff of a very dysregulated emotional experience. So, back to our initial question of how do we teach our kids to manage those emotions, specifically the trickier ones, the negative ones, in a way that is safe and more relationally appropriate? Right? I know many children, when they're experiencing distressing emotions, they're not very safe, right? They might be hurting others. They might be destroying rooms, which can be incredibly distressing, overwhelming, discouraging for the parent. How do we ultimately give our kids a language of emotions that is connected to the body-based understanding of what's happening for them before it gets too big, before it gets to the point where we're laying on the ground kicking and screaming? As always, we're going to start, when we think about this, by taking our cues from most of the time, and taking strategies from development is wise in order to help growth. It's a key. The first step to helping our children learn to get off of this emotional roller coaster, or maybe at least make it a less stressful ride, is to do something that we're going to call attuning to our kids. So attuning is this act of really seeing our children, not through the lens of how we are feeling or what we need to get done for the day or what we want them to be doing right now, but seeing what they're experiencing in any given moment. So let's talk about an example from infants. When our kids are infants and don't yet have language, they don't have a ton of movement skills to really do anything for themselves, we as parents see discomfort through them crying. We tune in to this type of cry or the body movement to assess if the distress is because of a wet diaper, hunger, overstimulation. We help meet the need that the sensation is speaking to. Hence, we resolve the stress cycle and return the infant back to a regulated state. How many parents listening could hear their infant crying from another room and know exactly what they needed just based on the tone of their cry? Right? This is attunement. In last week's episode, we spoke about attachment systems, and the meeting of needs is the foundation for secure parent-child attachment. It's also the foundation of having healthy relationship with our emotions. So this cycle of there's a need, there's a body sensation of an emotion. It might be distress. It might be a happy emotion. And then we resolve the need and return to a regulated state. That circle that happens over and over again from infancy is what helps our brains and our bodies learn what emotions are and then how to modulate them, how to manage them. As children get a little bit older, 2 to 5 years of age, a part of the brain called the limbic system turns on. So this is the part of the brain that helps us begin to slowly make sense of emotions. It's starting to, from a body-based perspective, like categorize emotions. We're trying them on from the ages of 2 to 5. Emotional regulation, or the ability to manage through, to be able to moderate our emotions, is some of the most important work of this developmental stage. At this age, children are feeling everything in a big way. They don't get a toy at the store, right? It's a huge expression of frustration and anger. They hurt their knee. They're so sad for a long time. Also, in this age, children experience something joyful for the first time, right? Their joy and their happiness lights up the room. Everything is intense and big. This is where it gets really interesting. And this is where our point of considering how we help our kids off the emotional roller coaster, or to maybe make it a little bit more of a gentler ride, is important. In order to eventually regulate, make sense of our emotions, our brains and bodies must be able to learn to understand them and then to find safety in them. As an adult, have you ever had the experience of being really, really hurt by somebody's words and a trusted partner telling you, it's no big deal, just be happy with the outcome? How does that feel in our bodies when this happens? The idea that the sensation of maybe sadness because of somebody's words is not correct or right, and that you should instead express happiness when internally you're feeling sadness, that's not a match. That's not helping to make sense of an emotion. Or have you ever had the experience of having a really rough day, right? Everything went wrong at work. Everything was challenging. You're behind all day, but you're holding it together because you're an adult and you're moving through your day. You're doing your job. You're picking the kids up from school. You're making dinner. And then you stub your toe and you might lash out in a tirade of angry words towards your spouse or maybe your kids about why they didn't clean up the living room. So this is another one of those examples of how emotions that are coming up for us in our body do best when we can process them, make sense of them, and then do something about it in the moment, rather than stuffing the emotion and carrying it. Eventually, those held body sensations make their way to the surface, right? Just like a volcano. And sometimes they come out in a dysregulated way with the need being expressed, maybe not a match for what the actual need is in the moment, right? The person stubbing their toe, the need might be comfort. The need might be space for relaxation. The need might not be that the living room is clean. So we all do this, right? We all miss periodically emotion sensation cues coming in, or we get busy, or we don't have the space and time to understand the need that is trying to tell us. However, this is the work of our kids. Our kids are actively in the brain developmental process of feeling something, feeling a sensation coming in, and then just trying to make sense of it. Developmentally, children are living in this deep, rich, emotional landscape, and their brains are literally being wired to process emotion and sensation and make sense of it. So, I want to go back now to our original question. Are children who are riding on these huge emotional roller coasters and making you uncertain if your interaction or your boundary or literally just about anything in the environment will take your child into an emotional extreme? How do we begin to make these emotional peaks and valleys less intense while still honoring what's happening for our kids? The most effective way to help our children regulate or make sense of their emotions is to see the emotion and to soothe the emotion. Now, to be clear, our job as parents is not to make the emotion go away. Our job as parents is not to return our kids to happy immediately. Or is it our job to fix the problem immediately? Our job is to show our children through our actions, our regulation, so that's our co-regulation, and through the relationship that whatever they are feeling can be safe, no matter how uncomfortable it might be, and that we are there to support the emotion as it waves through their bodies. The beautiful thing about emotions is that they don't last forever. In fact, the research shows that most emotions are felt for an average of 10 seconds. So, our job as the parent is to set the container for the emotion to occur. We set a container. We set the space for the emotion to occur and to get through to the other side. We are there to create a safety net for it. We're there to help give it some meaning. Each time a child can experience an emotion and come out the other side making sense of it for themselves, probably with our support, and then go back to safety and connection, it literally builds a brain pathway from the emotion centers in our brain up to our frontal cortex, which is our thinking part of our brain. We want to be able to think about our emotions to be able to move through them, but we have to have the pathways in place first. So let's go back to what emotional intelligence is. It's the ability to accurately sense a body sensation that is expressing the emotion and use this information to inform us of a need that's either being met or maybe not met. When this is working well in all of us as humans, we're quickly able to move from this feeling of like, ooh, that didn't feel right. I feel jealous. I feel nervous. I feel sad. I feel scared. I feel joyful. We're quickly able to move from that to thinking, oh, I'm jealous. I wonder if I need to try this. Or I'm feeling sad. I wonder if that's because of that. That's our thinking part of our brain. So let's talk about some specific strategies. How do we do that? How do we support these kids who are on these emotional roller coasters where everything is big and intense and help create a little bit smoother ride? The first step that I always talk to parents about is, how are you sitting with your own emotions? What is your relationship to emotions? The reason this is important is because never do humans interact in a vacuum. Interaction by default means that there's something that you're interacting with. And so when we are the adult who our job is to support the child's emotions, not the other way around. It's never the child's job to support our emotions. It's imperative that we understand our own relationship to our emotions. So examples I see and examples I've lived with actually in my parenting experiences, is sadness really uncomfortable for you? Is sadness too tricky for you to sit with in your lived experience? And therefore, is it really challenging for you to be with your child when they're sad? Is anger something that you're able to express in order to get a need met? Or is anger sort of like the red zone where everything shuts down and you just see fire and you're not able to stay connected in it? What about confusion? What does confusion do for you in your own body, or discomfort with unknowing? What does it do for you? And then what happens for you when your child feels that, right? In yourself, if you're a person who really strives on always knowing as a strategy for feeling safe in the world, right? If your child is learning how to, tie their shoes and becomes distressed by it, is it going to be challenging for you to let them struggle a little bit with tying their shoes while still being there for them? So this is where the self-awareness of our own body sensations that turn into our emotions, that then inform our emotions, and our own capability of processing through our own and being comfortable with a spectrum of emotions in our own bodies is a piece to supporting our kids when they're on an emotional roller coaster. Our kids are always watching us. They are little sponges of how we are responding throughout our days to our emotions. And the beautiful thing is, and we'll say this again and again in this podcast series, if we get it wrong, we own it, right? Whoa, I yelled at you because you dropped the milk. I was having a really hard day and I got really angry. I bet that was scary for you. I'm sorry. Let's clean up the milk together. That modeling is what we want our kids to do. So for us to have that awareness within ourselves is always the first step. Off of that, the other thing I really think about for our parents is when our kids are on emotional roller coasters and you feel like you're walking on eggshells, it can really impact our own regulation. It can impact our own ability to feel safe in our own bodies, especially if we have kids who are more physical in their expression of emotion. And so the ability to create strategies for yourself as the adult to weather the storm is also vital. If our job is to create safety and hold space for an emotion, we are going to need some grounding in place for ourselves. And I feel like, we talk about self-care, in this society right now. And as I say always, nobody's got time for that. That's really challenging. It's hard to find 5 minutes. And so the strategy I really like to think about is, when our child is experiencing something really intense, what self-soothing can you do for yourself in that moment? I'm talking in the moment. What can you do for yourself in the moment? You've got your vision available to you. You've got your touch available to you. You've got movement available to you usually. And so these strategies to support ourselves is another piece of the foundation in order to be able to respond to our child most effectively. The third thing that I alluded to is the seen and soothed. So your job is to see your child's emotion, not necessarily the behavior on top of it. So an example of this is going to be, wow, you're really, 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 really angry that your sister took your toy. You're mad. Oh, you're so mad right now. I might then at that time be separating them so that sister can stay safe physically, but I'm honoring the emotion that's happening. I'm making sense of this emotion for this child. The other response might be, no hit, we don't hit. There's no hitting. Okay. Do you see? While we still need to keep the child safe, it's a given that we're working to keep everybody safe in the moment. The messaging is telling the child what they can't do, but they're having a large emotional experience inside that is clearly distressing to them. If we give the focus to the emotion and let them understand what it is that they're experiencing, that is going to get us further faster. Another example of that is, whoa, you fell down and hurt your knee. Ouchie, ouchie. You're sad. Oh, it's sad, right? As opposed to, oh, it's fine. Get up. You're fine. Get going. Do you see how there's a disconnect there in the honoring of the emotion? Now, we're not going to sit in it forever, but our job isn't to fix the emotion. The emotion is what it is. And so when we have these kids who are on these giant emotional roller coasters, step one is catching up to like what's actually happening on the roller coaster. The next strategy around these strong emotions when our kids are up and down and all around is to create safety and boundaries during the strong emotion. Emotions, especially those intense negative emotions, can be scary, especially when you don't understand them. I don't know if anybody's had the experience here of just being so frustrated or so angry that you just yell and you're like, whoa, what did I do? Why did I say that? Okay, it can be really, really scary and unknown. So our job as parents is to create safety and boundaries during those strong emotions. So what that might look like is, I am going to keep you safe. I'm going to keep your body safe. I'm going to keep everybody else's body safe while I'm honoring that you're really angry right now. I honor your anger. You are so mad. I see how mad you are. Yep, we're going to stay right here because we need to make sure we're safe. I see how mad you are. I'm creating those boundaries around my child so that they can experience it and feel it, knowing that we've got them. Then, once the child has actually gone through it, the piece that helps the brain begin to really process and understand the emotion is to return us to safety, creating a sense of closure, solving the problem, returning to connection. So when we're able to return to safety, especially if it's safety within the relationship, it helps our brain rewire to, I can make sense and I can be okay. I can experience anger and I can be okay. I can get to a place where this isn't out of control and unsolvable anymore. So this might look like, wow, you were really mad because I told you no. You were so mad. Whew, I'm right here. We can sit together for a little bit. It might be, let's talk about what we're going to do next today, buddy. Right? At that point, we might step in and we might say, wow, that was really intense. Let's move on with our day. We're creating like the next step. We're moving the emotion through and we're moving forward with our day. So the child knows that the emotion does not have to be forever. It does not have to last forever. If there is a true need, there is always a true need with the emotion, but if there is a concrete need that we can serve, that we can support, if there's a problem we can solve, then we support the problem solving. Oh, you really didn't want to leave the park. Okay, next time, let's talk about racing to the car. I wonder if we race to the car, if that might make you feel a little bit happier. Or I wonder if you won't feel so angry leaving if we're able to think about doing it this way. This is the problem solving that we're looking for kids to have into adulthood. When as adults we feel frustration, anger, jealousy, nervousness. We feel it and then we do something about it. This is the skill we're giving to our children so that those emotions, when they come, don't have to take over. The waves don't have to be so big because now we understand them. We've got boundaries and safety, and we know we can return to connection. So that is just a few strategies to try when we're working with our kids, when we're parenting our kids who are on those emotional roller coasters. Let them feel their feeling, create their sense of safety, regulate yourself in the moment, and then return to safety and connection. Over and over, what that does is it's going to change the brain wiring so that the child can slowly move towards a more regulated state. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you like what you heard today, check out our Empowered Parent Coaching course offered through Thriving Parents Collective. In this course, you will get videos and course content to help you learn and develop the strategies you seek to meet your child right where they're at. Go to the show notes for the link. Where They're Planted is a Lit Path Studios podcast and is produced by Jamie Gale and Jen Bluske. Music is by Gaston Reen and Pod 5. Thank you for loving your child right where they're planted.